Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today's project out here in the shop is I'm actually got a set of Wright bandsaw guides, W-R-I-G-H-T. And these bandsaw guides have been around for a very long time. I think they were patented either in the very early 1900s, maybe even been late 1800s. And these were standard issue on most big industrial bandsaws for many, many, many years. In fact, these guides were actually made by Wright up until not too many years ago. And I'm pretty sure there's actually some copies that are still being made today. They designed a very good bandsaw guide. It worked well for many, many years, and like I said, it's still being used by many people even today. No sense in redesigning something when you get it right the first time. So when I dug these out of my stash, my guides that I had were in very poor condition. The castings, the bodies were all right. They were rusty, but the actual jaws that go in here, the bearing that goes in them, and all that stuff was just trash. In fact, some of the parts were even missing. So I was in need of having to get some new parts for these. I contacted my friend Bobby Knork up at Woodworkers Toolworks up in Wisconsin, and I knew from previous conversations that he actually has parts for these guides. He actually has them made and keeps them in stock. So I reached out to him, and I was able to order some new parts for these. Those came in the other day. So we're going to be putting these things back together, reassembling one of these Wright guides, and putting it back over on the bandsaw. Let's zoom in here, show you what we got, and let's get to work doing this. So the main parts of these guides is this casting here, and there's two parts that go together. This part mounts to the saw. There's a hole here where a stud comes in and actually mounts to the saw. And you've got a fixed jaw and you have a movable jaw. This jaw here comes in and out. There is a thumb screw that comes in here. Got a little area here that captures this piece here, fits over and makes it adjustable so that you can adjust that depending on the width of the bandsaw blade that you're running in there. There's also some jaws that go in here. The original ones were in pretty rough shape. Actually, they weren't just terrible, but I decided to go ahead and get some brand new jaws and to put on here. So again, these I just purchased from Woodworkers Toolworks, and I think what we'll do is we'll start by putting those jaws on. But before we do that, we need to put the bearing in. So in addition to the jaws that guide it, there is a bearing that goes back here in the back. Now this is the original Wright bearing. It's just there's really not a bearing, it's just a sleeve that goes up inside of a tube, and hopefully you got some oil in there that keeps that spinning. And this one was pretty worn. I mean, really and truly for what it is, it's probably not terrible, but it did have some issues. So I am replacing those, and these are the more modern style that Bobby sells up there. These actually have a bearing in them rather than just a sleeve bearing. It has a true bearing pressed into the back. You got the body there. I believe this is hardened for the blade to rest on. So this just goes into a hole back here in the back. There's a set screw, and I'm going to go ahead and, whoops, I just got a socket cap screw that I'm putting in here. This would have originally probably had a square head set screw in it. You can adjust this depending on, again, the width of your blade. So if you have a 1-inch blade, you would push it back in there farther. If you got a 3/8-inch blade, you'd push it up closer to support the back side of that blade. And basically the back of the blade is just running on this surface. I'm just going to snug that up right now. And then we will put our new jaws on here. Now, if you look in the jaws, some of them have a chamfer on them, some of them are flat. The chamfered ones go up here around this bearing. So there's clearance there for the bearing to move around. And we'll go ahead and just put these in place. He supplies new screws with these, as well as the guides. This one goes on this side. Okay, so now you can see here that little chamfer allows you to move that bearing in and out where it has clearance. On the movable jaw, same thing here. We'll just go ahead and put these guides or the jaws in here. I'll put my thumb screw, get it started. This just kind of fits right down in that slot there. And there's some guides down there in the bottom that those go in and out on. And then I've just got another socket cap screw here I'm going to use with a washer on there, and you'll tighten that in place like such. And with that, we have our guide assembled. And again, this very adjustable. You can move this in and out depending on the thickness of your blade. So if you're running a real thin blade, we'll loosen that bearing up right there, and we can just slide that up right to the very front there. If you're running a real thick blade, you push it back in there. So you adjust that so that you want the blade going between these two blocks, and you want the teeth to be just sticking out. And again, the back side here will run, and that will keep the teeth from actually hitting the blocks and dulling the teeth. Pretty straightforward. And again, you can adjust them in and out by turning this thumb screw here. You can tighten that up on the top and bottom to get your blade where it's running right in there. Now there's a second hole back here in the back, and that is just the mounting stud. So it just goes in and about like such. I got my finger back there. I can kind of feel it when it comes right flush on the inside there. And there's a set screw here that will tighten up. That will keep that from moving around. There we go. Our one guide rebuilt. I'm going to do the other one off camera, and then we'll go put these on the saw. And there we go. I have two nicely restored Wright guides for my bandsaw. These are ready to go. New bearings in here, new guide blocks. I ended up doing a new thumb screw for both of them. As it turned out, one of them, the original one that I did have, was a little bit too short. I really didn't have the adjustment length in there I needed, so I just made another one. And I had purposely made the first one a little bit longer anyway, so that worked out fine. These are ready to go on the machine. Let's put them on here. So these are pretty straightforward to install. I just got that little post there. I'm just going to push it all the way in. I can adjust it in and out a little bit if I need to. Once I get the wheel on here and the blade on here, we got a set screw there in the back. Once I get the blade, I can adjust it so that it's perfectly right, going straight up and down. But that's it. The blade runs through there. These kind of hold the back of the blade. The actual cutting part sticks out the front, and you set the backer wheel back there as a back bearing, and that supports the sides and the back when you're cutting and keeps that blade nice and straight while you're making a cut. And of course, you can move this up and down depending on the thickness of what you're cutting. Bottom guide, just like the top one. Got a little place for it to go into here. Set screw on here. There you can see, hopefully the hole here, the blade comes down through here. That supports in the bottom. We'll tighten up the set screw. All right, we'll adjust that once we get a blade on here. Well, there we go. Our bandsaw restoration is coming along nicely. We got our guides back on here now. That was kind of something I knew was going to take a little bit of time to get all that done. Got that checked off. Really all that's left to get this machine running is we need to put new tires on here. So these wheels actually have rubber tires on them. I've got those. I just need to get them installed. Probably do a video on that in case you've never seen how to install bandsaw tires. And the other thing I need to do is get the motor running. I've got the motor mounted down here. It's a Baldor 5 horsepower motor. What I've still got to source and find for this is the proper motor controls. So I need to get a magnetic starter on here properly sized for this motor and a remote starter switch that I can mount over here, wrap underneath this front table, so that if we need to shut it off, we can shut it off, turn it on right there where you'll be standing most of the time while you're operating it. That, and put a belt on it, and I think it's ready to go. So we are getting into short rows on this. And even though I don't know, I may have had Miles in an early video doing these, but Miles McDonald has been a summer helper that's been working with me some this summer while he's been home from college over summer break. And most of the work on this, Miles kind of did on his own without a whole lot of input from me. I've kind of filled in on a couple of little things. Of course, we built the base down there, did the guides, poured the Babbitt bearings, and like I said, the tires and the motor controls, I'll probably take care of the rest of that. But all of the real cleaning it up, painting it, there was some body filler work that had to be done to it, a lot of sanding. Miles really did all that, and that's the time-consuming part of it, so I want to thank him for that. Couple of quick comments on the base, because I did get some comments. One that I saw fairly often was they didn't like the fact, or y'all didn't like the fact that I had where those studs went through the floor, where I had something up on top of it because you were afraid that the casting was going to be sitting on top of that. That casting is cored. There's basically a lip that's about a ½ inch thick that runs around the perimeter of those feet, and it's hollow up underneath the bottom of that. So that little raised area up in there was in a cavity. That's where I welded that nut in there. So no chance of it really coming in contact with the feet. So we're good there. The other thing a lot of people commented on, and I tend to agree with you, but I did this for a reason, was they didn't like the fact that I put the nuts on the top rather than on the bottom. And yes, it makes more sense to put them on the bottom because then the nut is supporting the base and you're not counting on your weld. The reason that I chose to put them on the top was because of the length of the studs. If I put the nut on the bottom, I only had about 1/8 of an inch of movement left in that screw to do my leveling with, and I just didn't feel like that was going to be enough. So to get that little bit of extra room, I put the nut on the top, and that basically gave me the thickness of the nut as extra travel in those screws where I could do some proper leveling. So there was a rhyme to my reason. Yes, I agree with you. It would have been better to put them on the bottom, but because of the constraints that I'm working with, it just wasn't possible in this case. So guys, with that, that is going to be a wrap. As always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and those thumbs up are always appreciated. And guys, we'll catch you on the next video.